chose this out song because what it really does is focus on the relationship that is currently in progress. Take a chance on me if you need me, if you know I'm going to be around. I've got no place to go when you're feeling down. Morning, guys. In other words, you're the place I go to when there's a struggle. If you're all alone and the pretty birds have flown, which is an interesting line, honey, I'll still be free to the chance of me. I'll do my best, make no lie. You put me to the test if you let me try. I like that last line, if you let me try. Today is really about looking at ways of trying to make it better. Okay. The piece in white, the red highlight, is the bit that I really want you to know, because we can go dancing, we can go walking, as long as we're together, listen to some music, maybe just talking. And today what we'll do is we'll focus a little bit on how couples can make it work by being proactive. So there's a little bit from the song about actually doing things together. But what happens to a lot of couples is they don't actually plan to do that. They just, life goes on, they have children, particularly children are terrible for relationships. It's terrible to say, isn't it? So, because what happens is it distracts the couple from their relationship, and children are prioritized and their time is prioritized and so on. So in actual fact, getting quality time together is not easy to do. We'll talk about that a bit later. Let me tell you now, my love is strong enough. And that's true, you know, our love is strong enough, but are we being strong with our love? That's the catch. To last when things are rough, it's magic. You say that I waste my time, but I can't get you off my mind, or I can't let you go because I love you so. That's really good. In other words, I love you so I'm going to pester you until you come to the party. I really like that line. So, I want to start with a quote. Lucy and I were watching midweek this Indian movie about the life of Guru Ramdev, in which as a young teenage boy he reflects on a corrupt police officer who was victimizing him. So this young Indian boy is actually in what we would call an ashram, they call it a guru kal, I think, with a lot of other boys of his age. So he's only 14, 15, quite a young boy. But right through the movie, which starts at a much earlier point, he doesn't react the way others react. And this is a quote from the movie. This is what he says to his friend when they're talking about the corrupt police and the way the police are hounding him. A man feels defeated by his own helplessness, rather than the challenges that life has to offer. Others make me realize how people can exploit my weakness. Now, isn't that a good line? Others make me realize how people can exploit my weakness. I will turn this weakness into my strength, so that no one can ever exploit my weakness. Today we're really talking a little bit about our weaknesses. That our weaknesses are cunning, because they're subtle and they're unseen. And in a relationship they tend to grow. So we look like we're fine until we get into a relationship. Then they start to grow on us. So today I'm going to look at that a wee bit, because you've been working hopefully on listening to each other. But today I'm going to get you to do some more listening, very constructive listening. So, how do we make ourselves weak? First of all, by reacting to our emotional program. That's our big vulnerability. And most of us do it. And as you know from before, when you start the course, most of us blame it on somebody else. Secondly, another thing that makes us weak is by believing that we have been offended, and so we must either defend ourselves or be offensive. In actual fact, in a relationship, usually there's no one with a gun. Usually there's really no need to be that defensive or offensive, but we do it out of habit. And the reason is number 3, by believing that we must protect ourselves, actually our ego, against some imaginary attack. So what we do is we constantly stay in a relationship imagining that actually we're fighting for our survival. We never think it through. Hardly ever anybody thinks it through. And it's crazy, but this is what we do until we learn differently. Number 4, by not taking responsibility for being a better person than all the reactive people around us, that makes us weak. In other words, instead of saying, right, I'm going to be better, I'm not going to do what everybody else does, I'm going to be different, but most people do not make that decision. They don't consciously say, I want to be really good in this relationship. And fifthly, by failing to be proactive about what we want to live our lives. So most people do not say, right, how can we have a really good relationship? What are we going to do to make this really good? Hardly anybody does that. What most people do is they just let one day slide into another, they just do the chores that have to be done, and the relationship is hardly ever proactively constructed. That's why I wanted that ABBA song where they talk about ways to connect. So, we need to manage ourselves. So we need to get ourselves sorted. So the first thing, if you feel emotional, know that this is your history inviting better self-management. No point in pointing the finger elsewhere. We react almost all the time. Unless it's really out of fight or flight for our survival, basically, and it must be, of course, in the relationship, isn't it? Then basically it's our history that's coming back when we react emotionally. You don't actually have to know the history, you just got to know, oh, this is about me and I've got to work on it. Number 2, know that feeling criticised, demeaned or belittled offers you an opportunity to show how self-managed you are. If a 15-year-old round deaf can do it, we can do it as adults. We can say, okay, something's going on for my partner, something's going on there, they're struggling, they've lost their rag or whatever, but I am not going to join that party. Number 3, remind yourself that your partner may not be perfect, but is nonetheless lovable and allowed to be imperfect. Those who have seen me privately will know that one of the things I say to almost everyone is that perfection and imperfection is one of the biggest dramas in a relationship. Most people come with a drama about tidiness and cleanliness. That is their biggest issue. And that really is because they've just got different standards of how tidiness and cleanliness will work. But the truth is, you might be a bit bothered that your partner doesn't do some dishes, or as one guy said, he gets really bothered when his wife doesn't sweep the floor so that there are no crumbs on it. And he gets really bothered when he has to sweep the floor, and because he has to do it because she does it so badly. Right, now when you get that sort of thing happening in a relationship, and you can smile, because in actual fact most of us have been there sometime doing that, the thing is, what happens is, number 3, we lose the love because we're focused on this little thing that needs to be fixed. The floor's dirty and that really annoys me. And so what happens is resentment means after a while, you focus on this, you don't actually focus on the thing you had before. Now 4thly, remind yourself that you're with your partner because of all the things you love about them. So don't allow yourself needlessly to dwell on imperfections you may think they have. And sometimes they're non-negotiable. You know, that couple who had that floor sweeping issue, they had a few others as well, as you can imagine. On this occasion, the guy was perfectionist and he was an avoidant. Normally avoidants aren't the most perfectionist. Usually it's the anxious types. Because the anxious types are really worried about the family and how the dirty floor or whatever may affect the kids and so on. But the thing about perfectionism, it isn't specific to an attachment style. It's across attachment styles. And realize that therefore, when this is happening, this is an opportunity to transform yourself. So, what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to get you to start by going to page 245. Could you go to page 245 in your book? If you don't have a book, you can perhaps borrow one from me. So 245, I think, is the page you want to need a book.
Yes, this is where
Yeah, on your floor, please.
So, So 245, I think, is the page where you talk about how to reconstruct a relationship. Yes. So I don't mind don't worry about so much about the questions on that page. Just write stuff anywhere. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to think about this. Here's what happens in quality relationships. So that page is the page on which you design the way to move forward. 242 and 243 were looking at how you now are. So 245 is how to look forward. So don't worry about this, where you put it. But I want to talk about what happens in quality relationships. There are some differences, significant differences, that people do in quality relationships. But I can tell you not many people do have quality relationships. So it's not like we're arguing. So first of all, couples get good at negotiating and taking time to listen. And on top of that, they negotiate and talk about lots of things, a lot of the time. What a lot of couples do is they just get into a pattern, roles and so on in the family, and they don't talk about things because they just don't think there's a need to. So they don't, for example, talk about, I'm a wee bit worried about our 1-year-old crawling on the kitchen floor when it's covered in crumbs. Right? They don't talk that through, they just get annoyed with each other. But, so what couples do who are successful is they over-talk, if anything. Not one person over-talking isn't a solution, it's a problem. But when you both negotiate, talking about whatever's coming up. Number 2, they make every effort to support both separateness and togetherness. So what they do is they support each other to have their own interests and interests together. Both of them, not one or the other, both. Because that's the only way to get balance. So what happens in most relationships is people have too little togetherness. Some have too much, but that's much rarer. Normally the problem is that they have too little and they're doing their own thing and they're not talking, not engaging. Number 3, they understand they each have bad days and try to be supportive if their mate is struggling. Now you can only do number 3 if you've done what Guru Ramdev wanted to do, and that is not take personally the problems that others have got. In other words, don't let another person show your weakness. So if your partner's having a bad day, what you do is you try to stay supportive. Even if there's a bit of negativity coming your way, you learn that if there are 2 children in the room, there's a problem. As long as there's 1 child in the room and 1 adult, we're okay. So you want to try to be the adult. Number 4, they try to share responsibilities and talk about how the sharing can be best achieved. It has to be discussed. And if there's a variation to that, hey look, Lucy this morning was going off to a workshop, and she said, oh Jeff, can you put this food that I prepared in the car? And I'm trying to walk out the door to come here, so I look at my watch and I think, this is tight. This is tight. However, I think I can manage it. So I said, okay honey, I'll put the food in the car. She'll take quite a while to make it. And so I put her food in the car, and but it was a little bit tight, so I was almost to the point where I had to say, honey, I've really got to get out the door too. And if that was the case, there would be a needs clash, you see. Her need and my need would be clashing. And that happens a lot in relationships, so it has to be talked about. But in that case, she was moving quickly, I was moving quickly, so I just got to and did it. Because I don't get as anxious about time as she does, and I know that. So I don't get worried that she's anxious about time, because she'll absolutely want to be on time. But she won't be, I'll guarantee when I talk to her, she won't have been on time. But the thing is, it doesn't matter. She gets anxious about being, and I don't get so bothered about that. I know that about her, and I don't think it's a problem, it's just that I've got to work with her. Okay. Number 5, if they have needs, preferences, and wants, they frequently bring these up in discussion. As I said before, that tends not to happen in many couples. They just don't talk enough. And 6, both empower themselves to speak up on behalf of themselves and on behalf of the relationship. So, the crucial thing is that they're talking more and being quietly resentful less. This is challenging. Most couples really struggle to do the talking, especially if the avoiding has disappeared. It's really a challenge. Okay, so I think I've got a little exercise for you. I've got the next thing. Oh, okay. No, This is a slide before the one that I get you to do something. I think it's the one before. So how do we make ourselves stronger in a desirable partner? We develop some attitude. By never taking our partner or the relationship for granted. Now that is a big deal. Lots of people, particularly avoidants, take the relationship for granted. And I use the metaphor with lots of couples. It's like one day the avoidant comes home and the house seems a bit cold. And he realizes that someone took the fire out because he hadn't been stoking it. The fire's disappeared, now the house is cold. And frequently avoidants are far more engaging with their children after the separation than before, because the separation gets them to realize that actually this isn't good for me. I'm all on my own now. And so frequently they make much more of an effort to be engaging with the children after than before. So never take the relationship for granted. You've got to work with it. Number 2, fully owning our emotions so they don't ooze out over others and cause contamination. Now that's pretty challenging. We'll talk in a minute about the specific emotions you have to work with, but it's very important to know what they are and have a strategy for dealing with them. Number 3, but these are all things about succeeding. By being available to support our partner when they're wobbling, maybe all over us. So if they're wobbling, we don't see that as a problem, even if they're wobbling over us. It's more of a challenge if there's a needs clash. And the biggest needs clash is when the partner who knows they need to be strong is actually too tired, too stressed. That makes it really difficult because then there's no one resourceful in the room.
Or they're actually the subject of why their partner's wobbling.
Sometimes it's true.
That can be very complex.
Yes, it's true. So when people are not resourceful, they really need to take some time out and state it. Number 4, by focusing on and appreciating our partner's strengths and by communicating these as such. So it's really important for partners to be reminded that we appreciate them doing this, appreciate them doing that. It just takes a little bit of effort, but so many people don't do that because they just don't think it's necessary. Number 5, by taking the trouble to put time, energy, support and communication into our relationship. The real challenge for avoidance especially is that putting aside time. Because avoidance gets so caught up in the tasks to be done, it's really challenging for them to prioritize the relationship. But as I point out to these avoidants who are busy caught up in the world of making money and corporate management or whatever it might be they're caught in, it doesn't take much time. It's not like it takes a lot of time, it takes quality time often. Lots of little quality time. Questions? Last questions? If you've got questions or make comments. Now, I've got these 2 slides in here because I wanted you to know what your emotions were that you've got to work with. We've seen the slides before. So if you're the anxious type, you've got to know, you've got to be able to say, right, I do this and I do this. Now these are predominant, the first ones are up until number 4, I actually even know number 5. The first 5 are what, in my world, we call primary emotions. In other words, they occur without an emotion before them. But number 6 is a secondary emotion. Now that means it comes after one of the others haven't been attended to. So you get frustrated, resentful and angry if you haven't caught one of the early emotions and preferably process them with your partner. On page 242 to 243, I want you to make sure you write down what yours are. And it's really good if you know what your partners are, because then when you see them in those emotions, you can help them or you can be supportive. Avoidance. Which ones do you do? Once again, number 5 is what happens when it all hangs out. Which of those first 4 do you find you most often find yourself getting caught in? Now this isn't, I've presented these as being attachment style specific. That's not quite always true, but it's normally true. So it's quite possible that you are different in this. Don't worry. The crucial thing is to know one or two emotions you get that you are going to have to worry about. Now the likelihood is that anxiety is amongst them, being anxious in some form. Because when we get anxious, we get speedy and so on. Okay. So this is an exercise with your partner. And Mark, I'm wondering if you can go with Ian, who's got really good experience with this stuff, because then you can talk about your situation and he will pick it up very quickly. So I'm asking you today to get really specific about this process. Okay, so person A, you decide who person A is of the two, because you'll reverse later. Person A expresses something they've been finding difficult in the relationship. Dear, sweetie, I'm really, really bothered that in fact I'm being asked to do a job when I'm just walking out the door. Right? Something like that. Okay? So you put it out like that. And then person B practices this listening and reminds themselves that no matter what their partner has raised, it's just an issue of difference. So when my wife raised that this morning, she didn't know where I was at. I was walking around calmly. I knew what I had to do. So she doesn't know until I say it. If I say it, then in fact I don't have the time or something. So now what happens then is person B sits with any emotions that come up, making sure they continue to focus on the partner's story. And you can only do that, person B's listening, with those emotions if you know how to manage them. And if you know that you're being triggered, and actually you don't have to worry. There's no problem here. They're just talking. I don't have to react. I don't have to be defensive. All I have to do is listen. I can take as much time as I like, so I'll have time to talk later. Person B reminds themselves that no solutions are required if these are asked for. So you might say, I might say to my wife, okay, so you want that solution? I can't give you one right now. I'm too busy. Now that would be a worst case scenario, because sometimes, I might be in the middle of something and I can't say, well, honey, I don't know if I'm going to have time. So what you do, you don't try and go into the rescuing mode or feel pressure. And that's important, because if you feel pressure, you'll have to do either defend yourself or come up with an explanation. I want you to learn to slow this right down, because slow really works well. You can do that. Okay, so person B also stays focused on being empathic. One word of warning: if person A is an anxious type, don't overdo the talking. The anxious types tend to over-talk. It's not exclusive to the anxious types, actually. Some avoidants do also. But the anxious types get anxious about making sure everything is said correctly so they're fully understood. But you don't really need to worry about that. All you've got to do, preferably, is speak how you're feeling. iMessages if you can manage it. That's from last week. Okay. Any questions? You know what you're going to do. So you're going to take it really slowly. You can choose any issue at all. It doesn't matter. What you're really practicing is not solving it. You're practicing listening to it. You ready for this? You ready to go? Okay. Up we go.